Welcome to another episode of Peers Over Beers, your favorite digital and social evangelist podcast, with your industry veteran hosts, Chris Detzel. This podcast starts now.
Welcome to another Peers Over Beers. I'm Chris Detzel, and
I'm Nicole Saunders.
Nicole, it just rolls off now. So
It does.
you've done so many of these.
I'm a pro.
How have you been?
Good. Always busy, but it's starting
Yeah.
to get to be summer. This is like the really nice time for weather in Wisconsin, so that's been good. I've been getting out and gardening a little bit.
Awesome.
Getting back on the bike, bicycle, not motorcycle. But yeah, I think probably a lot of people can relate to an experience that I've been having lately, which is kind of across the tech sector. We're seeing things slow down. Companies are getting ready for this potential recession. Belts are tightening. A lot of regulations are going into place. And I know for me, that's put me into a place of doing a lot of evaluating of our work and our strategies and that kind of thing. So it's been interesting. It's been a couple of weeks of being really reflective on okay, what are our goals and objectives and what do we do and what is everybody's role exactly and really evaluating that. And it's led to some good learnings and some stuff that's still in process. How about you? Have you been seeing that kind of thing happening?
I have. I think that, organizations, and you see it on LinkedIn and other news and stuff like that, some organizations are going either through some layoffs or, they're not hiring. And, I'm the positive is from my standpoint, community is rocking and rolling, but it is also creating a lot of work for myself because I'm still the only person in community and have multiple jobs and hats and things like that. So from a hiring standpoint, I think I could probably say this is at the moment we are still hiring, but just more for specific roles, right? The more kind of key roles there. And so, the outlook to get a community head is going to be probably extremely difficult. And so, I'll just have to continue on doing what I'm doing, but there's been so much demand or whatever lately that, and we kind of talked about this in the pre-show, is how do you say no to certain things that come up?
Yeah.
I think it's a challenge for me, is because we talked about this earlier, is you've got the goal for the community the thing that you do with community is you build the hype, you then show the value, you show it what it can do, and people start seeing it and they want more and more and more. And it's it's great when people actually want more and you kind of do what you thought you were going to do. But then, there comes a time to where, well, you can't do all those things.
It's the last thing you want to do is get people excited, and then they finally come to you and you're like, oh no, we can't do that. Right? You don't want to have that sort of disconnect, but it's also true that you can't do everything. And especially if you're in a situation where you're not able to hire as much as you thought, or if you're going through a budget tightening exercise, or if there's even just more scrutiny on the work that you're doing, you have to start getting really strategic. And I've absolutely had that experience of I want community to be everything to everybody at the company. And, we're going to go on a road show and tell everybody how they can engage with us and everything that we can do. And then all of a sudden, 30 different people want to do events with you. And you're like, oh, actually I can only do 5. How do I pick? I got to now be strategic. I got to figure out what to say no to and how to do it in a way that doesn't make people feel oh, well, no, yeah, the community team said no, so I'm not working with them anymore. Right?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like anything. We're not the only ones in the business that have that problem.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can imagine, sales folks maybe saying to marketing that, hey, we don't do enough events, or hey, we need to do campaigns on this thing, or there's always opinions out there, and maybe it's more about, and I've been thinking about this too, and you tell me what you think. It's more about community leaders like us learning to do what everybody else is doing, what I mean, and becoming business leaders and being seen internally as the business lead, and community kind of being the a part of the business,
well,
and
go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it all comes back to being strategic and your
Mm-hmm.
strategy and knowing what does fall in your wheelhouse and what doesn't. And community can do so many things and be part of so many programs. And it's where you have to start to prioritize. And, to your point, when I think about other teams of the company, if I want something from this team, I got to submit a request for it a quarter ahead of time. And then they prioritize things and tell me what they can and can't do. And my team should function in a similar way. And yet we've always just sort of bent over backward to try to accommodate everybody at all times because we want to be those good partners and we want people to engage in community and see it as a valuable channel. But yeah, there are points in time where you either get too busy or where things get too tight for you to be able to just accommodate everything on the fly. And so you have to know, what is my strategy? What are my priorities? What do we do? What don't we do? And what don't we do right now? And so, we've been really kind of looking back at our strategy saying, okay, really, what is it that we do? What is the nugget that is at the center of what our team is all about?
Yeah, I think that's so important because, the last thing you want to do is do so many things that you're not effective. And so what's going to make the biggest impact? So that's where the strategy comes in and saying, well, today we're focused in on, community-led growth. Okay, well, what does that mean? And then that's the activities that drive community-led growth will be what we're focused in on. And that's it, right? Not, how do we do this event? How do we do that event? Nope. Does this kind of fit into what we're trying to do? And, something I've been learning as of late is, and again, I'm learning, and I'm on the marketing team. I report into the CMO, but I've got to work with his leaders. And, the hard part is, so I've created this really cool thing, it's a webinar program. I call it the Reltio Community Shows. And, I have shows almost every week now, and it's a time suck. But what marketing wants, or certain people in marketing, and, it's kind of leading to this, is how do we kind of pull this all together, right? Like if we're doing campaigns, and Chris, you're doing a community show on, let's say, data quality, but we're not, and you're doing it on data quality in June, but we have this whole campaign going out on data quality in July, you kind of missed it. You know what I mean? And so how do you strategically insert yourself? So it's more of those kinds of things. Like, how do I play well with marketing? It's, well, some degree, I've got to stop thinking, okay, I need all these shows, which is helpful to the community, which is very important. How do I also think about working with the business and making the biggest impact from our business standpoint, rather than, hey, all I care about is our community and what the community is doing. Yes, that's important, and you should think that way, but you should also think, and somebody told me this today, actually, our CEO, Chris, you do a really great job of this. What really kind of getting the community going. Because what you need to work on is the internal business, right? Not that you're not working well with, individual contributors and everything else, but how do you do the same thing that you're doing outside of, with the customers, partners, and even on LinkedIn and the stuff that you do? How do you do that internally too, at the leadership standpoint? If you want to move your career further, that's what you're going to have to do. Or because that's my view. And I was like, Jesus, that was harsh, but that was good.
I mean, sometimes the harshest feedback can be some of the most useful, right? It can be hard to hear that kind of thing.
I don't know if I got off there, but that was
okay.
kind of what was on my mind a little bit around the business piece.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it's all part of the same story, right? Which is that, and I think this is a topic that we've sort of touched on a couple different times in different aspects, which is really that as community is becoming a bigger part of businesses and business strategies, community professionals really have to start to level up to not just being really good at community, but being good at business.
That's right.
And understanding the relationship between the community and the business and starting to tie those things together. And whether that is helping to manage an internal community as well as an external community, bringing insights and reporting from the community and raising those up and sharing those out across the company. I know early in my career, I was always like, well, everything I do is public. Like if anybody's interested in the community, they can just go look at it, right? But like, that's not really what the business needs. What the business needs is me going in every week and saying, okay, we've answered this many questions. Here are the topics that customers are really concerned about. Here's a really interesting product suggestion that came out of the community. There's a group of users that are kind of upset about this thing that we did that we need to rectify with them. Those are the insights that a business really needs us to draw in and bring into it. And again, aligning it with the priorities and the strategy, right? It's not just, oh, there's 37 posts in the community this week.
So what?
Okay, great. And what if I can say, hey, there were 37 posts in the community that were about this product launch that was a big part of our strategy last week. And here's what they said and how they feel about it.
Yeah.
Totally different context, right? Now that's got some meaning. Now that aligns to something that's a key, business strategy or a key driver.
Yeah, it's such a good point. I like that. And I also think that, while we're on strategy, you've really got to focus in on how does your community strategy tie into the business goals, and, like you said, community can touch almost every piece of the organization, almost every piece, even HR. You can get people engaged to help answer questions and they get excited about that and they can do certain things. But there's a lot of different parts of the business. But if you're more strategic around what are you trying to accomplish with community, and as it grows, you can start touching more parts of the organization, whether it's marketing or customer success or support or, whatever. I think that is the key. And then, like you said, communicating the value, bringing those stories and those community type things that, hey, here's some trends, here's some things. But it's also saying, community led to 50 leads this month, which would be great. Or and then proving it out. You know what I mean? Like, this is hard shit. And this is a journey again, because communities are starting to do this. Case deflection is a good strategy, to have. I know it's not a sexy one, but it's a huge opportunity, to, if you can prove that out, say your community is saving $1 million a year or whatever the money is. I mean, who doesn't want to hear that? Depending on your audience. You might not go to a marketing person or CMO and say, hey, we're saving support this much. It's great. So what are you doing for marketing? You know what I mean? So it's always talking with the language too of the people you're with.
Well, and what I'm hearing there is a couple of things. One is, and like, we could clearly do many podcasts just on the data piece, right? How do you get your hands on your data? How do you use it? What are the metrics? What are the KPIs? Are you measuring the things that are actually your primary objectives? There's that whole, like, you're going to get what you measure.
Yeah.
And so make sure you're doing that and make sure you can tell the impacts. And so there's the whole data piece. There's also that piece of, the community can touch so many parts of the business. And ideally, as things grow, you grow your team and you start to reach more and more. I think that many community teams have this tendency to try to like spread ourselves super thin and like, I'm going to touch all the parts of the business at once. I've often felt like a lot of community programs are sort of like raising a tent where you get all the tent poles and you got to lift it all at once, right? There's this whole ecosystem.
Exactly.
But like, if you don't have,
I've done it. I'm guilty at times,
hands on all 6 tent poles by yourself, right? Got one your foot and one your teeth. No.
Anyways.
But that's one of the things that we've been looking at is like, we've done a really good job of getting ourselves integrated into many parts of the business, right? We work with product, we work with voice of the customer, marketing, we work with sales, we work with customer education and training. We're on the marketing team. We have a huge role in support. And now we're getting to that point of, oh, wow, we are doing a lot of different things. What are the most important? And so one of the exercises that we're going through is measuring impact.
Yeah.
We're looking at all of the different projects we've started. We've got this space in the community we created just for product managers to write about what they do with the product and tell people about it. And we have this recognition program over here. And we were trying to bring these aspects of training into the community. And so now we're going back and looking at, okay, of all this content we're creating, what's getting page views and what isn't?
Yeah.
And like, one thing that we found is we were spending a lot of time very carefully, thoughtfully handcrafting this beautiful content. It was getting like no page views. And the reason it wasn't getting any page views, one is a little bit of that SEO thing, right?
Yeah.
But a big part of it was that we hadn't built out the strategy for how we were going to promote that content.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're doing this great content and we knew it was super useful, but then it was just getting posted and sitting there. It wasn't going out in any marketing. It wasn't getting posted on social media. We weren't sharing it. And so that was one of the things we looked at and said, okay, we have two choices here. We can build out that promotion strategy and make sure we're really driving traffic towards this content and that it's getting out there and it's getting used, or we can just stop this activity. What we can't keep doing is spending a lot of time building out content that's not really going anywhere. And, it's not because it's not good content. It's just because nobody knows it's there. Right.
Yep.
And, so we're doing that.
Is your community open? Is it like?
It is.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep. It's open to the public. So it's, it's primarily customers that interact there, but anybody can come in and check it out. And I think it's great for prospects, right? They can come.
I guess the reason I think about that is I do a lot of that too. And I think that one is there's technical SEO type stuff that can be done, and whether or not you kind of manage that or somebody helps you manage that. If nothing, then I would certainly kind of look at that. Maybe you are, but that's key. So one of the key things to me in creating content like that is so that people can find a question that they have and answer it on Google, and Google answers it. Because I always say this is, if you don't have the content, if somebody searches for you on Google about your product, has a question about it, and they don't see it there, it's a very frustrating experience. They don't want to go to, docs.reltio.com, support.reltio, whatever. They don't want to go to those sites. They're going to Google on purpose.
Yep.
And so now they have to figure out where to go at Zendesk or Reltio or whatever to get the question answered. And then they probably search in different places and can't find it. And maybe eventually they find it, but it's a very frustrating experience. And then when they do find it on Google, they're not excited about it. They're just expected. So what I wonder is, and maybe you thought about that, but is if they're searching on Google and they're not finding the answer, and maybe the content's not really helpful anyways, because maybe not helpful content, I don't know, but it could be an SEO problem, like a SEO technical problem within, your systems or whatever.
I think there's part of that. I know for us, part of it is like, this is new stuff. And so it takes time to build up the SEO.
Yeah, a long time.
The Google juice, as we like to call it, right?
Yeah.
Like, so that's a piece of it.
Yeah.
But, the bigger point is really just like how important it is to regularly look at sort of the portfolio of all of the work that you or that your team is doing.
By the way, thank you for bringing this back.
Yeah. Always. I'm always like, come on, Chris, over this way.
You're getting too, sorry about that.
No, not at all. I mean, these are all like important aspects of it, right? And
yeah.
And that is part of that valuation. Okay, is it an SEO problem? Is it a promotion problem? Are we not putting this in the right format? Should it live somewhere else? But the key thing there is that we can't just keep doing what we're doing. Like once we've recognized, like, okay, this isn't really delivering, we either have to do something different or we should stop doing it. And it is
absolutely.
I think that's the hardest thing sometimes, especially when there's something that you feel really deeply is like, oh man, this is going to be like so great for my members and they're going to love it so much. And then if it doesn't work the way that you were expecting, sometimes it feels like, well, maybe if I just do it a little bit more. and really what you have to do is evaluate what's working about it, what's not. And I think when we get into these periods of time where we have to start being like extra strategic, right? Whether it's because you're delivering something or your organization's going through a change, or, like we're saying at the top, like maybe you've got a budget cut, or maybe you didn't get headcount you were counting on or something like that. You have to really dial in. And the first thing to do is look at, what am I doing right now? How much of it aligns with my top priorities?
Yeah.
What is the stuff I'm doing that doesn't really align? And then of all of those things, what's working and what isn't? I mean, you gotta take the things that aren't working and either figure out what's going to make them work or scrap them. You can't just keep letting them zombie on, because they're just going to weigh you down and hold you back. And so I'm really excited to see. My team and I are doing a little exercise right now where we're all keeping track of where we're spending our time. Right? We're basically filling out timesheets, and it's not a fun exercise.
Are you writing peers over beers?
Yeah. I think this falls in brand awareness campaigns, or maybe professional development.
Professional development's good. I like it.
I'll put a subcategory though. Well, and I do have people qualifying, like, how much time are they spending on professional development and reading books and listening to podcasts? Because I think that is part of your job. It's a really important part of your job. But it's going to be really interesting to see, because I suspect what we'll find, and I suspect most teams would find this, is that most of us probably spend most of our time not actually working on our top priorities, right? If you say, like, these 2 programs are my top priorities, but you're only spending like 8 hours a week total on them, and then you're spending a whole bunch of time checking your emails and organizing your tasks and being in meetings and things. And so the reason I'm doing this is really just so that we can have a good discussion and an informed discussion about where we're spending our time, where are the things that are inefficient that we could maybe automate or stop doing or hand off to other people, and how can we refocus so that we're actually spending most of the time working on the things that we've stated are our key priorities and our key deliverables this year. And I think this is something that we all imagine we would do on a regular basis, but you actually really have to stop and take a couple weeks and sit down and look at it and talk through it and make sure that you are spending most of your time working on the things that are the highest priority. And this is like not a community specific thing. This is for anybody, but I think it's particularly helpful for community teams because we get pulled in so many different directions.
Such a good point. And, I kind of find myself here, and here at times. And
totally,
and you're like, right now that's important. Right now that's important. Right. But if you kind of look back and you start thinking, but I have this thing that I have to get done over the year. Am I making headway to this year, of getting these goals and things like that done? It's everything that I'm working on for the most part. I'm not saying you don't do one-off whatever things, but is it aligning with that, like you said, the strategy that you're trying to accomplish and the roadmap that you've put together for your teams to go and accomplish? And if it doesn't, then you kind of know where you can cut. I'm not saying that you just cut everything, because life is life, right? You got to go to meetings sometimes and but you can say, I'm going to these meetings every week and really doesn't align to what I'm trying to accomplish today or the year. So you can easily at some point say, look, I can't go to this meeting anymore. I'm not going to be able to accomplish my goals. And then that gives you more time back to be able to accomplish those things. It allows you to prioritize. I love that you're doing that because it's so easy to get off. Like it's just,
I mean, your example right at the top of the podcast, right? Oh, somebody came to me and they had this special project and they wanted me to do it. And I felt like it was really important to say yes to them.
Yeah.
But does it align with the community strategy? And I think the really cool thing is, like, once you really focus on your strategy and once you know your priorities, it creates space to be able to say no. If you don't know what your strategy is and somebody comes to you and says, oh, can we do this special thing? You're like, yeah, I guess so, sure. But if you say, you know what, I love that idea, it really doesn't align with our strategy right now.
So maybe it's
fit
important.
It in July, or, I think this will really align with the stuff that we're working on in Q3. Let's put it there. And it creates a really great way for you to be able to start to control your time.
Yeah.
And to be able to know what to say yes and no to, and why. Why are you saying yes or no to things?
Yeah. I think too is like, if I had a team, what, just from this conversation, something I would say is, if you don't know the strategy, one, have one. And then two is, if you don't know it backwards and forwards, because maybe you're not the one as a community manager putting that together, maybe your leader is or whatever, or you're helping or whatever it is, maybe you should go back and continue to look at that and saying, well, do these kind of tactical things or whatever align with what I'm trying to do? Because sometimes I have to go back to my own strategy and think, I'm supposed to accomplish, this many references, this many whatever. And I'm like, what am I doing to do that? Like I haven't done anything lately to do that. So
like, you're a runner, right, Chris?
Yeah.
And if you were getting ready for a race, it'd be a real bummer if you got to the day before a race day and you're like, oh, I didn't really train.
I was doing some
I got distracted by other things, right? No, if you're running a race, you've got a schedule of like, I'm doing a 2-hour run on Tuesday. I'm doing active recovery on Wednesday. I'm doing strength training on Thursday. Like, you have that, and you know that you have to hit almost everything in your plan so that you'll be ready for that race. And yet a lot of us approach work like, we'll put out our plan and our goals for the year. And then we take off moving and we never do
Yeah, we forget to go back.
Am I sticking to my training plan?
Exactly. We forget to go back to the plan and kind of look at that. And that's what the roadmap's for, and to really kind of keep you on track. And probably as a leader, it's something that you should go over with your team, every so often to say, hey, look, here's our roadmap. This is what we're getting, this is where our strategy is, and then this is how we're going to accomplish it. Let's make sure we're on track. And I like how you're kind of, in a sense, tracking some of the, everybody's tracking sort of what they're doing. And, then it probably allows you as a leader to say, great, what are some of those things that, here's our goals, but so-and-so mentioned, or maybe maybe you look at your own self and say, I've been doing these things, right? And that looks like I probably shouldn't be doing these 3 things that I've been doing for the last, I don't know, however long. So I'm going to stop doing at least 1 or 2 of them. What are some of yours that you're trying to, you know what I mean? Like, I'm thinking out loud because this helps me, to be honest, like, to be selfish.
Hey, I'm here for it.
So I'm just kind of bouncing that thought, to even a further kind of thinking, because I think that, I think that's so important, and I don't do it enough, to be honest. I should, but I don't,
Yeah. I mean, I would say this is probably the first time I've really put my team through it rigorously, where we actually have like, okay, we're going to track our time, and then we're going to look at our goals, and we're going to figure out what aligns and what doesn't, and where there's gaps, right? Maybe there's something we're really trying to accomplish and nobody's working on it right now because we're all doing other things, or we all think somebody else is doing it. And so I think it's an important exercise, and I'm really excited to see what the outcome of it is. I think for my team, it's going to really help us feel really clear on what we're doing, how we're working together, how we're going to get to and accomplish the things that we're accomplishing. And again, it gives us that ability to say no, or to recognize like, hey, that is a great idea. Let's put that on a backlog. And next time we're doing strategy, let's talk about how we can incorporate it. But right now we don't have space to add anything else.
Yeah. Is that hard for you to say, don't do that anymore to your team?
Oh, it's so hard. It's the worst. Especially like if it's something that, I hear the quote a lot, like communities built by doing things that don't scale, right? And that's so true, especially early on. You got to be super hands-on and do things that like work when you have 100 members that would not work if you had 10,000 members.
Yeah.
And so I think the hardest thing is when we've got those things where we're like, man, this is like super awesome impact for these 6 people. And you're like, okay, but we got to serve like 600 now. So like, I hate to tell you not to do that thing because I know that it is super valuable for those 6 people, but we can't keep focusing on just those 6 people. You gotta get out there a little bit broader, or, hey, we're gonna have to put it on pause and come back to it. And so that's hard. And it's also, I know for me, I like to give my team members the opportunity to learn the things they want to learn and pursue what they're interested in the context of their jobs. Yeah. And so I'm constantly sort of like trying to figure out how we can organize our work in such a way to create opportunities for people to build the skill sets they want to build, get the experience they want to experience. And so that's why it can be tough sometimes to say no. Yeah. Right. Because maybe somebody really wants to learn something. I'm like, man, I get that. And I see where it would be valuable for you. And we can't do it right now. That's just way outside of the wheelhouse of what we're trying to do this year or this area. Yeah. And I've already had some conversations. Like I had one team member where I looked at it like, you are leading 7 major projects. 7. That means you could spend an hour on each of them every day, and you'd only get 5 hours a week on any of your projects. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be successful doing that. We got to figure out how to get you down to 3 or 4. And it was so hard to like pick, right? Like what are the things that you're like, yeah, we really should do that, but it's not something we can accommodate right now.
It's not in the strategy. It's not going to accomplish what we want it to. Yeah.
But let's talk about what happens if you don't do that, right? You end up with all of these things that are sort of like, maybe they get 80% done. Maybe you get an MVP out the door and you're never able to do the version 2. You get something that launches and then just sort of sits there and doesn't go. And so the key to it,
what happens.
Yeah. And I mean, gosh, I've got examples of these things probably from every job ever, right? I'm sure all of us do. And so when you're thinking about like, gosh, I really want to deliver something. I want to see this through all the way to fruition. I want to have it be really successful. it means excluding other things. And, another quote I came across this week that I really liked, I want to say this came from like a Tom Hanks article that was going around one of the business publications. But it's the recognition that everything you say yes to means that you're saying no to something else.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never thought about it that way. I just kept being like, I have infinite yeses. I can just yes everything, right? And that's
Sure.
just not true. And so the question really there is like, are you saying yes to things, like so many things, that you're not actually able to say yes to the most important thing?
So you're so smart. That is really good.
I read a lot.
I probably should read some. I don't have time because I'm doing too much yesing.
Doing too much yesing. That's going to be our new like catchphrase here. I mean, I'll be honest. I listen to a lot of stuff. Like I listen to a lot of podcasts and books and things while I'm out walking or gardening or something like that. Sometimes I have to remind myself, like, it's okay to just not listen to anything and just have like a Zen moment. You don't need constant input. But it does help bring some of these insights together. And I love learning that stuff.
No, I think that's awesome. And, I think that any way you can kind of focus in on your career, your personal growth, and things like that is highly important. One of the things that helps me for my personal growth is things like this, is talking to people like you, because you read, you listen to smart people, all the time. And so, but, you're doing this for a living as well, right? And so some of this stuff really helps me. But, I encourage everyone to have their outlet to, one, look, you don't have to think about work all day, every day, and you shouldn't.
Yeah.
On your time off, okay, maybe you're doing personal growth and trying to be better at business. Fair enough. But, go do some runs, go do some biking, go do whatever it is that, is fun to you, play Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know. But whatever that is, do it. Have fun.
Well, your brain needs that time to rest and be creative. And, it's interesting doing this time tracking exercise, because I realized the day I took a walk before work, which I try to do most days. And I spent the entire walk thinking about strategic things for work.
Yeah.
And so when I got back, I wrote that down. I spent an hour doing strategic planning this morning before work. And it's really helped me realize, like, oh gosh, I might only work 8 or 9 hours a day, but I might think about work another 2 or 3 outside of that.
I'm the same, yeah.
It's not that that's a major problem, but it's also a recognition that, like, you do need that break time. You do need those gaps. And also that, professional development should be part of your work day. It shouldn't be, I work 40 hours and then I go take a class, or I work 40 hours and then I go read a business book. And so when I created my time tracking sheets for my team members, I actually put professional development at the top of the list.
Oh, you have time tracking. Okay, that's interesting.
Well, I mean, this is this exercise we're going through. It's basically a spreadsheet. But that was the first thing I put down, is how much time are you guys spending listening to a podcast, reading a book, going to a webinar, talking with peers in the industry? And I suspect most people are going to find that it's very little.
Yeah.
And I want everybody to be spending time every day. You should have a couple of hours a week where you're out in the industry learning these things, or you're reading up on a business book, or you're having coffee with people to learn about what they do, because that's going to make your work better. It's going to inform you. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't just happen on the fly. And I think that's the biggest mistake a lot of people make. They feel like, I got to be productive all day, every day. I've got to get my tasks done. And they don't spend enough time kind of zooming out and thinking about their work. And that's really what ultimately is going to help you grow in your career, be more impactful with your work, and it keeps you interested. Like, you and I are both clearly very passionate about community. We're sitting here nerding out about it.
Yeah.
Every couple of weeks. I mean, you do it every single week. But if you don't take the opportunity to do these things, sometimes, wow, a true athlete of podcasting, right there.
It's
But yeah, you gotta have those opportunities. You gotta build that into your workday. It counts. That's part of your work.
I agree. I mean, I feel like I need lots of personal growth, and when I kind of looked at when Michael passed away, I was doing the podcast with him and things like that. I thought, something I wanted to do anyways was talk to leaders like yourself in the industry, right? And just, one, give you a platform. Two, I wanted to learn, because to me, he was the smartest person I knew around community. And, he helped me in my career, and that's why we did it. But then I was like, I still want to learn. I still want, and that was really an opportunity there. And, I do sometimes twice a week, to do these podcasts because, I want the opportunity. Look, doing these podcasts is really difficult sometimes. It's not difficult, but it's a lot of time and effort. You got to think about cutting some of this. Sometimes you want some quick hits. Sometimes, so it's nobody else but me doing it. But it's so beneficial to me that, and it's also extremely helpful. I think like others like to be on podcasts, you know what I mean? And so great. You love to be on the podcast, Nicole. Me too. Like why not get together? And I've got to know you. Like I could reach out to you in a month and say, hey, I really need your help. What do you think about this? And you would probably reply back within, a day or two, say, oh, well, how about this and that. Now I have a whole network of community leaders that can help me solve problems. Like sometimes Scott, he'll get on here and I'll be like, hey, what does this really mean? Like I heard this thing and I don't even know, like, should I be doing this or I don't know, whatever. And you just have somebody to go to in a network that will reply to you instantly,
Well, and it's so valuable, one, because it's so important to get diverse perspectives, right? And have a number of different people you can tap into, but also you're the only community person at your business, right?
Exactly.
And I think for so many of us, we're often the top community expert. We may have more depth and experience in community than our own managers, because community typically, it's still pretty rare for there to be a chief community officer or even a VP of community. That's and right. Therefore, you need other community professionals that you can lean on when you're facing these problems where it's like, okay, I could talk to my boss about it, but I'd have to explain like all of this context for them to have in order for them to help me through this decision. But if you can go tap into another community professional that, okay, yeah, I know what that kind of a thing is. Let's dive into the problem solving. That can be really, really, really valuable. And, it's part of why, like you said, you do this with the podcast. I try to have conversations like this with other community professionals a couple times a month. Just have coffee, pick their brain, get to know them. And it's something I really encourage all of my team to do too, because that's been the single best thing for my personal growth or my professional growth really is just been sharing knowledge with other people. It's so funny. People are like, so what communities do you participate in? I'm like, community manager communities.
Yeah, exactly.
Very meta.
It kind of is, right? That's funny. Well, Nicole, this has been really, really good. Hate to cut this off, but
I know we could just keep going for hours, but people probably don't want to listen to a 3-hour long podcast. Huh?
Yeah, I think 40 or 50 minutes is probably good enough.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, I think so. Quick, easy. So, well, thanks everyone for tuning in to another Peers Over Beers. I'm Chris Detzel, and
I'm Nicole Saunders.
Thanks again, Nicole.
Thanks, Chris.